I know, how's it all down there? You must be cooling off now.
Winter is coming, but we're going to have a hot spell over the next week and a bit. It goes back up to high 20s, almost 30.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm trying to get back to Hungary soon. I live between Budapest and Helsinki. Okay, Finland's really small. 5 million people, Hungary's 10 million people. But Hungary's in the middle of Europe. It's an export economy. It has agriculture. Finland is more of a tech and services industry. And they, even though they have a big paper industry before, and then obviously Nokia, which went out the window, now it's full of little startups and gaming and obviously some industrial tech companies. A lot of them I worked with. And Hungary is like the centerpiece of Eastern and Central Europe. So it's a big logistics center, it's a big agricultural center, and obviously the greater Hungary was much bigger. So this,
well, it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire for a long period of time. So they did dominate Central Europe. Yeah,
it was a massive empire, and I mean it was one of the melting pots of centuries. I mean the Hungarian borders are like more than 1,000 years old. It's not like a new country.
But I really appreciate that because my family's Polish, so we've sort of seen a bit of what happens in the Eastern European side. But It's been probably 25 years since I traversed Hungary from I did Austria, Hungary, and then went into the Czech Republic and Slovak Republic. But everyone forgets that I suppose it's the eastern side of Hungary. That is the bit that lay people like me over here in Australia don't usually do much with. You see the beautiful Buda and Pest, with the Danube going through it, but you don't realize how close the east really is, like the Russia and Ukraine. Like for a minute there, I just didn't join the dots. Of course, Ukraine's right next to you.
And, we've got a border.
And it's something,
like a border with Ukraine. Yeah,
and it's funny because here we just think of because Hungary's just there and
somewhere
Austria's
in the
just
middle.
There, and you don't worry about what's on that side, but it's perfectly central. You've got all the beautiful culture, from the it's just renowned for music. And good cultural classical music, amazing composers, amazing musicians that have lasted centuries, and how it was so culturally advanced many centuries ago when there were still barbarians in England, so to speak.
Exactly. And also this whole like Rubik's Cube comes from Hungary. They're very, maybe because of the language, they're very high up with the mathematics, and like Bill Gates, the next guy in Microsoft, was a Hungarian guy, the programmers, and Hungary and Budapest was the Hollywood of Europe. If you look at like before the Second World War and the movies and everything around, the Hungarian TV is insane, like the films and the way they set up. That's why you see a lot of the Tom Cruise and a lot of the Hollywood movies and even now not only Hollywood, but people want good production and amazing. The architecture is so different, the country is so different, and there's lots of people who want to work. It's cheap, so there's a massive film industry and that still goes in Hungary, and that cultural thing is still carried on. And obviously the chess champions and business mathematical minds and all of that stuff thing. But when you look at like the last 20 years of how Hungary's developed and the investment and how export economy and obviously now it's a manufacturing hub. And Hungary has a lot of nuclear power plants, which help. I think they have the cheapest energy in Europe now. So that's why you have all the investment from the east. You have BYD, the biggest factories, Samsung. I mean, these battery factories are just insane. And BMW, all the German manufacturers coming there. And that's good in one way. Also on the natural resources, you don't want too much of that huge industry eating away your nice beautiful landscapes. Hungary per se is not a big country from what it was, and it has amazing natural resources and just countryside and stuff. So people are already sensitive about that.
Boyd, maybe can you give us a bit of a background to yourself and your relationship with Gergely?
The Bogányi piano project started off because Gergely is my brother-in-law. I met him obviously in Hungary, and over the years he kept telling me about his project, what he wants to do, and I was like, that's crazy. And he showed me some drawings, and this was in 2011 or 12. Him being one of the top classical, I mean, he's like a rock star in Hungary for classical music. He's one of the top Chopin and Liszt performers worldwide. And he was really interested to start this piano project. And once he got the whole thing moving, he asked me to jump in and help him with creating the branding and the marketing, and obviously more than happy to do that. And he was really, his passion for music is, these guys are so, I would say, obsessed in a good way about what they do. When he was talking to me about it, he said, yeah, so once upon a time I played one of Liszt's old pianos, and he said the sound of this piano was so soft and round and smooth. And he said, like, I've been playing all these other pianos in the concert halls and they're great, but I just the concept suddenly came into my head that I want to play something that I just feel that it's me playing. I want this sound, this smooth round sound. And he said this piano was really small, and he said the pianos of, say, Liszt era, that time were made for concert halls with maximum, I think, 200 to 300 people. So the design of the piano in the last 200 years, they go, oh, it's in a concert hall, just needs to be bigger. So they just made it bigger. So if you think of anything like automotive design, how much that's changed over 200 years with the needs of people or roads or travel or engine sizes, and the design has changed. They didn't just make the same, Bluebird bigger or smaller. And he's obviously into his sports cars and design. And he was thinking, well, if they made, and they've also made some really good carbon fiber guitars and cello. And he said there must be a way to figure out what is the main issue, the pain point of every concert pianist, is that the piano's consistency and quality of sound is always affected by the soundboard and obviously the tuning, which means that there's dust, humidity, playing as well, obviously decreases or increases the tension in the keyboard area and the strings. And so he was thinking, well, if I could get a soundboard that wasn't wood and I made it out of carbon fiber, a composite that would now have a much crisper and clearer resonance, maybe that would work. And so he started off with this carbon fiber soundboard and fitted it into the piano he had at home. And they tried a few different versions of the composite mix, so it's not purely carbon fiber. And that, he was like, wow, this really makes a big difference. But what if I changed the whole thing? What if I changed the whole design? Because if Formula One cars and aerodynamics and sound have changed, there must be a different way. So he had a really good friend of his, a guy called Peter Uveges, and we call him Mr. New York. And he's this really introverted industrial designer, and he designed guitars. And he said, yeah, I'll have a go. And so he said, can you make it like a sports car, but something totally different that takes into account, and see if you can make it like a modern design. They obviously sat and talked, and they came up with the fact that the piano, the way it's made, the third leg, the one at the front, the sound goes out and then it goes down into the floor again. So if you play on a normal piano design as an artist, you feel like the sound is going away from you and out. It's not like with you. And it's a little bit of a, not a delay, but it just feels different to now. He said, if I take the third leg out, will we get the sound more instantaneous and more resonance towards the audience and less friction on the sound because of the design and the flow of the piano? If it's on like a plinth and not with the third leg going into the floor. So Yeah, so he made up some wild designs and somehow they came up with it. And that was the essence of the story, is that he wanted to make this design that just gave him this round flowing sound. But just thinking about it and getting into the carbon fiber and having these ideas that could work, they ended up with this, what they call a bat piano. Looks like a Batmobile.
Is it physically bigger than a traditional grand piano?
The size, I think, there's two sizes. There's 2 meters 92 and 2 meters 62. With 62 is almost the sort of in between size, but the 292 is bigger. So it's based on the size, fairly close. But I wouldn't say it's massively bigger, but I think it can be wider. It is a more aerodynamic shape. So that I don't think it's massively bigger, but it is very close to the same size. It is big. And one of the latest inventions that he's done is the heaviest part of the piano is the cast iron centerpiece, so to hold all the strings together with the tension. I forget about how much pressure, but I want to say 30 tons, but I think it's more.
Really?
The pressure, so to keep the tension, because the strings are held together by the centerpiece, and then you have the mechanism which then hits them to give the resonance. Now that is out of cast iron. I think they weigh almost more than 200 kilos for a grand piano. It's massive crane. That's why the pianos are so heavy. So he's made a carbon fiber centerpiece to fit that into, like, as a replacement. So it's taken a whole lot of weight off the piano as well, added to the design. So he's actually managed to make a carbon fiber centerpiece that's able to hold that tension, so they can make all the elements in the factory as well. So it's really a good piece of craftsmanship. The guys in the factory, it's literally some really good friends and guys that work in woodwork and have learned everything from scratch to make this happen.
So with I'm trying to get my head around, so the technology is that it's a bigger, cleaner sound on the back of the sound waves coming out of a different shape, but also the materials are different because you don't have the timber soundboard. You've got a carbon fiber, so it's really utilizing modern materials to play an ancient instrument, but refining it in such a way that it projects and is cleaner in the audio that's coming out of it, and it's lighter as well.
But the most important part is obviously the keyboard mechanism. So they've even modified to make their own mechanism, because normally the big piano manufacturers, it's a bit like Bosch with automotive. They don't make the windscreen wipers and those kind of internal elements. They make the body, but then and there are like famous keyboard manufacturers that they specialize in keyboards. So with the shape of the piano being slightly different and the possibility to make this called a graph system and slightly modify it to assist the sound the way that, Gergely, he did make some adjustments and to make the actual keyboard and the mechanism slightly different so that he gets a better sound out of it. And after now it's like 10 years, I think they've really got the consistency and the quality of the sound. So it has to be said that when he wanted to make the piano, it wasn't to compete with Steinway or Yamaha or Bosendorfer. It was to make his own sound, a sound that he liked, that he knows is going to add something to the more value and sound beautiful to the audience. It's not to say that, oh, no, we don't like Steinway, because you can't compete with those guys. They're massive manufacturing giants, and they've obviously got huge heritage and skills, and they're amazing at what they do. But this is almost like someone making a Bugatti instead of a Ferrari, or, it's just they're two of their cars or their pianos, but the one's is a Bugatti, it sounds like that, and the other one's a Ferrari, it sounds like that. The traditional pianos are what they are, and the Bogányi piano is what it is, except that the whole point is to make something easy on the eye and the ear, so it sounds as good as it looks.
And as far as the interface from the pianist with the piano, that side of it still remains the same, so it's still played exactly the same way? So you could jump from a Steinway to this piano, and the technique is not different in any way, shape, or form. However, the sound is different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like driving a car. Same thing. You just got a different engine. It's going to feel different, obviously, from maybe the pressure of the keys and then the resonance of the sound. What the musicians have said, they had a good quote from the guy that at the launch, who's a famous jazz pianist, guy called Gerald Clayton. He's from New York. He said that it feels like you are hovering in a cloud of sound when you play. Like the sound, you're just in this bubble of sound compared to when you play another piano where the sound is moving away from you.
What I find fascinating about looking at the pictures in it, it's like an art piece. Traditional pianos are pretty standard in their form, and they have never really changed much. So if you look at traditional type pianos, they all look similar, but yours looks completely different, and it looks like this huge art form. I don't know, that's the feeling I got, which was very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that you hit the nail on the head there in the sense of making a piano. Obviously, the high-end pianos are really expensive, and if you look at the market, it's hard to break into the high-end markets with the top concert halls and music academies around the world, because they have contracts or they're bound to the bigger, more established manufacturers like Steinway or Yamaha, Bosendorfer, and all the international competitions are obliged to use certain brands. So to come from nowhere unless you've got a massive investment and to come into that market is, it's a different game. But I don't think that's not the sort of idea that Gerry had, was just to make something that you love and put it out there and make it just at least get it into the world, not to suddenly not become a musician and a huge businessman and lose your focus on your music. He's never lost that focus in this sort of boutique world that he wanted it to be. But what it really is a piece of functional art. That's what I call it. Because for the people that buy these, normally the price is around 250,000 euros, and give or take the customization or the duties and transport your area. The people that buy them are normally like really wealthy real estate owners, or very good for yachts, super yachts, because of the humidity and the way that the piano handles all weather conditions. Not to say that you don't need to maintain it or clean it. It's a nice piece of art to have in your lounge or your hallways or your entertainment areas. And for that reason, the self-playing systems are really useful. You don't need to hire a pianist to play. You can get the self-playing system and play, your favorite jazz or whatever you want, and you have this centerpiece or artwork that's giving you some nice live piano music, which is really cool. So The core of it was actually, so what do we call this thing? What should it be? Does it need to have a name of the inventor, or should it be another brand name? And the funny thing was that it's like this, the Bogányi piano is the only piano that's been invented by a pianist. Every other piano, of course, have had influence from famous pianists asking, but normally this is the first one that's been really designed by a pianist. He said, I'm playing it, I want it to sound like this when he's playing. So that's why it was a no-brainer for me to say, well, you've got to have your name on it, because that gives it the credibility, because all the other manufacturers are obviously the names of the inventors or engineers, or that's where the credibility comes. And so if you make it another name, branding is about reputation and people's belief in the product and expertise. If we gave it another name, we would still have to explain why it's good. Gergely Boganyi is involved. So it just made much more sense, and to make it like a real premium luxury signature brand that would cut through the clutter of this sort of old classical 200-year-old staid design and something more interesting. That was the main idea around it. It connected with the story and the whole philosophy and expertise behind it much tighter. It sounds like a simple thing, but we had some really long discussions. The artist's name on the piano, what if a guy don't like the way he plays? And it's like, well, there's a lot of sensitivities. So, but eventually we came back around to it makes the story much more simple. Branding needs strong, simple messaging that people can believe, and when they look at it and find out, it stays. It's not too much of a weave to get there. Yeah. 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 Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we did a few sort of, I would say, internal and external things, and it's actually a bit of a dichotomy. Like the hard problem is you've got this amazing instrument that sounds great, but the way Gerry plays, and he can play anything and make it sound good. I mean, that's a hard part when you making a product. It's a bit like asking, if you get Kimi Räikkönen to drive your car, and he's like, yeah, no, this is not bad, but he can do things that normal people can't. You have to sometimes be careful how advanced the quality of just normal is. So that was one thing, to not to go too deep into it, but to go, well, hold on, we're going to make something that is not going to sound like a Steinway. It's going to sound like its own, but that level of playing and quality and experience for a concert pianist at the highest level to play must feel at that same level of quality. So that was the kind of quality control we had to try to figure out. It's not that easy because it's quite subjective, and some people can go, oh no, this is not good for me, or it's too stiff, or it's too soft, or it's too loud, or it's not an easy balance to just ask opinions. Eventually you have to try to look at the manufacturing standards, and then you have to draw the line and go, right, now we're finished, this is it. And we also did do some sound tests, and just to get an idea of where the resonance of, like say, a Steinway or other pianos were, just to make sure that the quality is there. And obviously we have a few musicians in our family, so the whole families are musicians, so there's a lot of critique coming from there, you believe you me, on how whether it's good sound or bad sound or short or long. That has obviously taken place on a musician level, but also on a sort of commercial level. Obviously taken to places in Munich and Germany for showcase events. We even had a show at the Big Boys Toys in Abu Dhabi to test it out there. But I think going too far on the sort of luxury end in terms of that environment, maybe that's too far. But then also going into the music world, you don't want to be too tight there either, because we're not trying to compete with anyone. It's almost in a category of its own between functional art and beautiful music in a whole different genre. We almost had to think that, the real positioning is, is it better than a Steinway, or as good, or does it fit into the classical music world? Of course, it has to perform at that level, guaranteed. We're not, as a business, you're not going to succeed by going head on into that market when they're so well established, and we are just a small manufacturer in Hungary and growing the brand. So that's a big challenge. And also to be a boutique business, more about trying to position with interior designers, architects, maybe big real estate developments as well, who linked to the interior designers, who want people that want very high-end furniture and these kind of things that fit into their designs. Which is why now they're making a few smaller versions and things that could be more suitable for homeowners and not so massive. It's been such an interesting project like that, because you're crossing between so many genres. Like it's a bit like, Audi makes the A2 and then they also make the R8. And we sort of jumping into the R8 like supercar scenario from zero, but you still want to appeal to normal drivers. So this is it, and also you jumping into a whole zone of competition that's been established and very well established for many years with a whole new design.
And Boyd, where have you sold the first pianos? Where's your main market been so far?
Obviously, there's a lot of support from the Hungarian government, and so they purchased the first few into all the main concert halls and one or two of the embassies as well. So that's like a showcase of Hungarian innovation and productivity, if you want to call it, or obviously music. And then the other clients are basically super rich or well-off people that want some really interesting furniture. Because you can customize a piano, and obviously each one is made with a serial number and it's yours. They obviously like that exclusivity and like high-end luxury item. They're buying expensive furniture anyway. And normally it's not the owners themselves. They all have people that look after the projects. So whether it's the architect or yacht designer, they'll both have interior design firms or consultants showing them certain things. So that's one of the niche areas we try to talk to. So it's really not about mass marketing, and it's about trying to get into the zone. And most of the people we sell to don't want their names known. It's very private, because at that level they're not wanting to have their names splashed around, which is also tough in a way, because you want to showcase some of your pianos in the right area.
Are these mainly in Europe, or are they mixed in the Middle East as well? Or?
Yeah, Africa, America. Obviously, the Middle East is a market that we want to get into, and we're working on that. You also need people that like classical music, not just a nice piece of art that sits there. It's expensive and is not being used that often. And obviously, looking at China as well. I mean, I think at this point, Steinway sells more pianos into China than Europe almost.
Wow.
So the Chinese have a really they have a massive affiliation for classical music, and they have unbelievable work ethic. And I mean, my son's a pianist as well. So the competitions you go to, all the academies all over Europe, you see these guys. They would not only piano, but all kinds of classical music. The Asians they have an amazing work ethic and passion for that. It's quite incredible.
They over-index in our private schools here from a music perspective, and they're incredible. Their skills and technique are just amazing to listen to, amazing to see.
Yeah, the discipline for kids, I've seen kids in Hungary, and I, don't want to be wrong, but they are 10, 11, 12, and you can see they're basically on their own with a tutor, and their parents are maybe still in China, and they're learning and being looked after and coached along the way, because it's just a zone, proper focus. It's quite fascinating, actually. Sometimes a bit disconcerting, because if you look at the Western, especially Western European way as well, the music academies and all that, most of the income and tours and that are going towards the East. The market is there. You really need to, keep a good balance. It's not a bad thing, but like I find it really interesting. I'm going like, I just wonder, it's funny because, like we like karate and all these martial arts, okay, and the Asian guys love the classical music, and they're super good at it. But there are not many Western people playing Chinese music, like the harps and the light. You know what I mean? It's like there's obviously a human connection and a mathematical mind and rhythm and sound that makes this connection, which is a very far one from classical music into like the Far East. I've always been, how does it connect so well? Because you wouldn't think that it would in that way, because I think it's about music, culture, education, discipline, and ability and technique as well. They're fascinated by that, this work ethic and ability to perform at the highest level. So, I mean, you have Yo-Yo Ma, Lang, all these guys, and those just the top ones. You have conductors, it's phenomenal.
Boyd, and the next steps from here, where do you see you guys going from here? You're going to keep on doing what you've been doing, or do you have some quite big plans of what you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think one of the things to achieve is obviously more fluid business and sales, and also maybe trying to, I'm speaking from my own behalf, but I think the factory itself is really small. I guess we can produce maybe 3 or 4 a year, but normally it's like 1 or 2 pianos a year, keeping it clean, doing some innovation. It's not a super fast moving business, but that's also driven by sales. So, I think it's at a perfect time now to look at it carefully and think, well, if we do, want to invest and get some investors in, we've got a good footprint out there. We've got a great product. you've got everything in place for the next phase. And like I said, already now, I haven't seen the finished product of this. There's a smaller grand piano coming. I think it's 2 meters 12. The smallest one now is 2 meters 60. And then even working on an upright piano as well, but with the Bogányi kind of design. I'm not sure if that's hot for the press right now, but I know that that's what's coming out in the summer. So when the factory has got some extra funding and is working towards that, it's focusing on that design and innovation more than making new ones, because all the pianos are made to order, and it takes around 3 to 4 months for one to be finished from scratch. Obviously, depending on customization and keyboards. So you can change the colors, you can add cool fixtures of gold or diamonds or whatever it is. There's just some really interesting cosmetics you can make. Carbon fiber, well, obviously you can paint a normal piano as well, but the carbon fiber has some really nice qualities that you can use to make different colors and shapes. And we've made one really sky, sort of sea blue piano, one sort of champagne brown one. It looked amazing. A red one, Ferrari red one. So you have different options that make it cool. So it's really a small business, sort of family run at the moment, and this is really I would say it's an unbelievable project for me, because it's a family business, but created literally from scratch, with expertise, with a whole creative endeavor that is normally it's just never happened. It's just that would be nice, looks good, but you never make it. And so for all the guys that work in the factory and girls and the designer, and has got some really good potential for the future, I think.
Boy, that was fantastic. It's an amazing product. What an evolution. Well, not evolution, what a revolution in something that has been so staid for so long. And you're right, it's a segment that's been dominated by these old European family businesses that the heritage of those brands. I take my hat off to you, because it is a challenge you're really going up against the establishment, and the establishment is not just it's a juggernaut. So you've got a groundbreaking product with a totally groundbreaking design, but with an incredible sound. And I like that when you described it, you're surrounded in this cloud of sound, as opposed to the sound just producing the sound and going away to the audience. So that must be an incredible experience for the pianist, let alone the people that are sitting around listening to that. And it has to give the pianist a lift within themselves, that they're actually submerged in the music that they're creating, that then it's almost like this self-fulfilling cycle of it takes you to another level. And I'm actually, my sister played piano. I'm a drummer, so I'm the guy that hangs around with musicians. But when I see musicians that where the music takes them and it takes them to another level, I'm actually excited to see this instrument being played and hear it being played, because it's just, from what you've described, it's like, I want to experience this instrument. I want to, because it's the thought of being immersed into something that you're creating the music in, that then is giving you that feedback that is stronger than any other instrument of its type can do. You get goosebumps. So, and I'm only a hack musician. But for people like yourself, your family, it must be just incredible to experience it. It's like driving the Ferrari, and it's you're correct. I think it's exciting. What an exciting project to be involved in. And you're right you're in the epicenter. You're in Central Europe, which is the heartbeat of classical music. Wow.
Yeah, and made by the actual guy who plays, to go, well, what can I do to make something better? How can I make it better? It's an amazing, the clarity and the endeavor of the people to make that happen is just incredible, I think.
Boyd, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story. It's that's really exciting.